Let's talk about planning and writing an extended response. This is something that we have talked about in class, and I wanted to create this video for you so that you can recall and review the steps to writing an extended response for the GED test. So basically, how I think about the GED test, I think about it in terms of these 4 steps. The first thing that you need to do, your first job when you're writing the extended response, is to read the passage. They're going to give you a passage. It will usually be 2 sides of an argument. Your job is to read the passage, and you need to read it well. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is to plan your response. Once you have read the passage that they've given you to read, then you need to plan. You need to have some kind of an idea of what you're going to say and even how you're going to say it before you start writing. It might sound like you're making this process take longer than it should, but trust me, if you plan your response well, it will save you so much time. The third step is to write your response. Once you have a plan, you can begin writing. Your plan will make writing go much more smoothly and quickly than it would otherwise. And then last, if you have time, revise your response. That's step number 4. And I'm going to be honest, they're only giving you 45 minutes to write your GED extended response. So you may not have time to revise your response. That's okay. If you did a good job of reading and planning and writing, you may not need to do much revision anyway. So those are the 4 steps. Let's go into a little bit more detail on each of those. So like I said, the first and most important step of writing well is reading well. You need to start there. And that's why in our class and in a lot of study material, so much time is spent devoted to reading, learning how to read, learning how to comprehend what you're reading, and reading analytically and critically. You might feel like you're a pretty good reader. The extended response, the idea of writing more than 3 paragraphs might make you really nervous. But the thing that you should be really concerned about isn't writing, it's reading. You need to be concerned that you're reading well. And if you're doing that, the writing will come much more easily. No matter how much time you spend learning how to be a good writer, if you don't read well, for this particular extended response, if you don't read well, your writing won't be as good as it needs to be. So make sure you are reading and understanding the passage as well. Once you've done that, you are ready to plan. When you're planning your extended response, first, unpack the prompt. They're going to give you a prompt, a question, something to write about. And you need to make sure that you understand what they're asking you to do. You need to make sure that you understand the question that they're asking before you start writing. Because if you write the most amazing essay in the world, but you're not answering the question that they want you to answer, if you're not answering the question that they want you to answer, you're not going to get the points that you deserve. 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, a human won't even read your extended response. It's going to be read by a computer. And a computer won't give you bonus points for being a really good writer if you don't answer the question. So you need to make sure you're answering the question. You need to make sure that you're understanding the question. Unpacking the prompt it's another reading task. It's something else that you need to read and comprehend. You need to read and comprehend the question that they're asking you to answer. Once you've done that, choose a position. Like I said, they're probably going to give you a passage that presents 2 sides of an argument, and your job is to choose one side. They'll usually ask you to choose one side of an argument that is better supported. So you need to have an idea. Before you start writing, you need to have an idea of which position you're going to choose. There is not necessarily going to be a right or wrong position. You can get a perfect score on your extended response regardless of which side of an argument you take. But you need to choose one side. A lot of times I see students write an extended response and they get to the end and they say, in conclusion, both writers made good points. That's absolutely not what you're supposed to do. You need to choose a side. You need to be mean. You need to pick sides and defend your side. Don't try to be diplomatic and friendly and nice and say, well, everybody's entitled to their opinions. That's absolutely not what you're supposed to do. Choose a position. Pick a side. Third, find specific and relevant evidence. Find evidence in both passages that you read, both sides of the argument that support why you chose your position. Don't just choose your position randomly or arbitrarily, but choose the one that you think you can support, the position that you think you can defend. And find evidence from the passages that prove that you're right, that prove that your opinion is a good opinion. Because not every opinion is good. Fun fact, there are bad opinions. So find specific and relevant evidence to support your opinion. And again, you need to be doing this before you start writing. Before you write your introduction or anything else, you need to have an idea in your mind of what evidence you're going to use in your extended response. Again, because when you do this well, it makes writing go so much easier. So you're not trying to write and form an argument at the same time. Step 1, form your argument. Step 2, write it down. And then the last thing, make an outline. Again, you need to have some idea of how you're going to organize and structure your extended response before you start writing. You need to have some idea of what's going to be in the first and second and maybe third body paragraph. You need to put some thought into this before you start writing. If you're trying to build the plane while you're flying it, it's not going to work. Trust me. Let's talk about how specifically to find specific and relevant evidence. This is really important. You need to make sure you're doing this well. This is a big part of the extended response. Number 1, first rule, don't quote something you don't understand. Don't try to just find big words or important sounding sentences and use those to support your position. If you read a sentence that you don't understand, don't mention it. Don't bring it up. Hopefully you can find another sentence that you do understand that you can use to support what you're saying. So don't quote something you don't understand. Find it, write it down, paraphrase, put it into your own words to demonstrate that you understood it, to demonstrate that you're not just pulling random quotes out of the air. And then the last is explain your quote or paraphrase. When I say explain, I mean explain how this quote, how this piece of evidence proves that you're right, proves that your position is the better one. If the quote that you chose does not prove that you're right, if it does not support your opinion, choose a different quote. If you can't make a clear connection between what you're quoting and what you're trying to say or argue, then you need to choose a different quote. And if you can't find anything to support what you're trying to say something else. Again, just as a review, these are the 4 steps to writing your response. Number 1, read the passage. 2, plan your response. 3, write your passage. And then 4, revise your response. I said write your passage. I obviously meant to say write your response. Read the passage, plan your response, write your response, revise your response. This last slide, it has some good information for you to know kind of what is expected of you when you're writing your GED extended response. There are 3 criteria that the GED test is going to be evaluating you on. The first is creation of argument and use of evidence. This is why it's so important to use argument or to use evidence well. This is why it's so important to create a good argument and to choose a side, because this is the first thing they're going to be looking at. When I say they, I mean the computer that is programmed to read your response. But creation of argument and use of evidence, that's number 1. Number 2 is development of ideas and organizational structure. Going back to making an outline, you need to have an outline, some kind of organizational structure before you start writing. It's going to make your job a lot easier. And you need to make sure you're developing your ideas. If your paragraphs are on average 2 sentences long, you are not developing your ideas well enough. Take some time to explain what you're trying to say. And then the third is clarity and command of standard English conventions. This is important. In all of this, don't lose sight of grammar and sentence structure and spelling and punctuation and capitalization. But at the same time, that's not everything. Even if you have perfect grammar and punctuation and sentence structure, but you're not using evidence correctly, you're not going to get a good score on your GED test. So this is part of it, but it's only 1/3 of it. And the good news here is that they're not looking for perfection. They're not looking for an absolutely error-free extended response, because they know They're only giving you 45 minutes, and nobody writes anything perfectly in only 45 minutes. So they're not looking for perfection. The GED test has made it clear that you're allowed to make a couple little mistakes here. But if those mistakes interfere with somebody being able to understand what you're saying, those are not little mistakes. So the key here is somebody needs to be able to read and understand what you're saying. If you make a tiny mistake, but we can still figure out what you're trying to say, it's not that big of a deal. But if you're making big mistakes that affect the meaning of your sentences, that is a problem. And that's where it affects clarity, where it's going to start to negatively impact your score. So these are the 3 criteria for a good essay according to the GED test: creation of argument and use of evidence, development of ideas and organizational structure, and clarity and command of standard English conventions. Hopefully this video was helpful and interesting to you. That is all for now.